the 14th to the 17th century, Europe was experiencing a time that historians came to call the Renaissance period. Preceding this, Europe had lost one-third of its population to the Black Death and needed a brighter time. The artistic side of the Renaissance started in Florence, Italy, thanks to the many artisans who lived there. The arts, however, were not the only ones impacted. Areas like medicine, education, and science were also affected by the Renaissance. I'm sure you've heard of scientists like Isaac Newton and Galileo Galilei when speaking of the scientific revolution, but you won't readily know that's important. In 1543, Nicolaus Copernicus introduced his theory that the earth revolved around the sun in his piece on the revolution of heavenly spheres. His idea was revolutionary because it challenged everything that people believed at that time, which isn't always a smart thing to do. Copernicus faced opposition from the church as well as his own self-doubt, a factor that almost caused him to remain a nameless patron of history. The scientific revolution, to which Copernicus is accredited for starting, took place all across the European continent, and hand in hand with the spiritual enlightenment of the time. The revolution itself was a wonder because it opposed the view of the church, as well as the majority of the known world. People like Hans Leprosy, who invented the telescope, assisted people in the trade by making things so much easier with things like the barometer, thermometer, and the microscope. People, instead of clashing with officials, it piqued the interest of everyone involved with sciences at the time, including those who had realized that the old theories were flawed but still hadn't spoken up. It was Copernicus who gave their doubts a voice. In the biography Copernicus' Secret by Jack Rebchik, Copernicus' life is laid out starting before he was even born. Two astronomers, Reggie Montanus and George Purbach, worked together and unknowingly laid out the groundwork for Copernicus when they wrote the Almagest, which was Purbach's life work. All this leads up to Copernicus' big secret, his heliocentric theory. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do you keep something so monumental a secret? Well, that's easy. Copernicus almost didn't publish his works for the fear that he was wrong or he'd left things incomplete. At one point in his life, Copernicus published his first work, explaining his heliocentric theory. Many people read this and got excited. At the conclusion, he promised more to come. As the years passed, and without any further publication, people began to lose interest, believing that they were nothing more than the ramblings of someone with no proof. The truth was that Copernicus was just afraid. He didn't want anyone to ridicule him because he hadn't finished the work or he'd left things completely wrong. And you know who was to blame or who encouraged Copernicus to finish his work? None other than the young George Joachim Rheticus. Rheticus was a Lutheran who traveled a very long distance to meet his idol Copernicus and help him finish what he started. Alongside Copernicus, they worked together many long months and finally finished on the revolution of heavenly spheres months before Copernicus died in 1543. I know, you're wondering, what exactly is the heliocentric theory? Well, here it is. As you can see, the Earth revolves around the sun, and which in turn is orbited by the moon. Now, I know, to you and I, it's nothing special, but back then, it was one of the many speculations of what the solar system looked like. Another example is this. This is the geocentric theory provided by Aristotle on his piece on the heavens. Aristotle and many others believed that the Earth was the center of the universe. He was backed up by Tycho Brahe, Johannes Kepler, and Ptolemy. This is Aristotle. Now, you might be wondering how they came up with such things, but by watching the stars and by figuring out the patterns, that's what they came up with. It wasn't until Copernicus came along that anyone had a feasible replacement for such belief. Going back to Copernicus himself, a shocking fact that you might not have known is that Copernicus wasn't actually an astronomer. Sure, he took a few college courses here and there, but he was considered a terrible student. He showed almost no potential in his earlier years, and he didn't even start going to school until the late age of 19, and then he proceeded to spend 12 whole years in school. labeled him definitely a slacker. Well, he tried to go into canon law with his uncle, but he was too lazy to take the simple test to become a priest. Despite all this, he did use his primitive instruments to do miraculous things, including spotting the lunar eclipse Alpha Tauri in 1497. He was also many things, which kind of surprised people later in his life. He was a physician, a polyglot, a classic scholar, a governor, an economist, a diplomat, and in 1517 he set down quantity, a principle concept in economics that is still used to the present day. Nicolaus Copernicus II went on to become one of the greatest scientific minds the world has known to date. My name is Kaylin Calhoun, and thank you for watching.